seconds, sir. So live streaming is about to start in 1 minute, 30 seconds, sir.
Sure.
Scheduled, sir. We'll wait for a minute or two, sir, and then we'll start it right away.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we start, just a few things like we discussed yesterday. I'm sure a lot of students will have questions.
Definitely.
Let them post those questions as and when they have those doubts, and one of you can just collate that and ask the important ones once the session is done.
Awesome. So we have enabled the chat box session, sir, as
Okay.
well as over YouTube comment section.
Right.
We'll be taking the
Right. So you can pick out the best ones and just
definitely. Sir. We'll allocate some 20, 30 minutes maximum, sir, for the interaction.
Sure.
Even the attendance of the students is tracked using Google Meet, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. We have enabled that feature, so we'll be
Very
tracking the entry and exit of students also.
Very nice.
Sir.
Do you also use Google Classroom?
Yes, sir. Actually, in this training program, we are giving assignments after each session to students over Google Classroom. And
We also,
yes,
when
sir.
we do our blockchain course, we use Google Classroom and Google Meet. Very, very easy to use and pretty good.
Yes, sir. Really, sir. We have all the UG and PG class sessions over Google Classroom, sir.
Very nice.
These days, sir. We have started it.
Very nice.
Yes.
How is the situation there? Corona situation?
It is under control, sir. No problem. In Junagadh, the part where we are living right now, in Saurashtra region, is controlled, sir. But in metro cities like Ahmedabad, like Baroda and all, no, there are many cases. But not that serious. The death rate has come down, sir.
Yeah.
Really,
Things are looking slightly better.
people are getting recovered. Even around us, we are seeing people getting COVID-19, and they're getting recovery, sir. These days, only home quarantine is advised, not hospital. Sir. Yes, sir.
I think people are learning
to the hospital.
more. People are learning to become more immune, trying to be more careful.
And even we have started taking, all the herbal drinks like haldi and all.
Right. So the Agri University can play a big role in identifying.
Yeah, really, sir. Yes, sir.
Very
That's
nice.
the thing, sir. Even the agri sector has reported positive growth rate, sir.
Really, yeah.
Yes.
Good to see.
Yes, sir.
Very good to see.
We are live stream, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good morning, everyone. So my name is Satish, and I represent a company called InteliTix Solutions. So I have been working in the blockchain space for the last 5-6 years now. So being one of the early movers in the space, I have seen this technology take baby steps and reach a stage today where nations and specific industry segments are exploring the use of this technology for various initiatives. Today's session will be about knowing or giving you a basic understanding of what is blockchain. Because as I understand, most of you don't have a background in technology, I will try and keep it as simple as possible and give you analogies which will be easy for you to understand. But this is a complex technology. Don't expect to master the understanding of blockchain with just this session. You need to do a lot of learning. You need to take interest and learn a lot more about specific elements of this technology to be able to use it in practical work that you guys do. But what I'm seeing all over the country with the work we are doing with the Agri University in Tamil Nadu and other universities is there is a lot of interest for blockchain technology in agriculture. Good to see that agri students and faculty and people associated with the agriculture space are taking a lot of interest, and we are seeing a lot of initiatives that are happening. What I will be doing in the next 1.5 to 1 hour 45 minutes is to take you through, like I said, the basics of blockchain. What is blockchain? What kind of problems does it solve? What are the basic characteristics of blockchain? What does the technology include? Then I will be looking at agriculture specifically. What are the challenges in agriculture and how can blockchain solve these challenges? If we have time, I will also take you through one or two case studies and also show you a screenshot demo of a blockchain system that we have developed, which is for tracking and tracing organic produce. So this will give you a complete idea and understanding of, okay, what is this technology, what does it try to solve, and how is it practically being used? Because this is very important for us to get an understanding, right? And I encourage you to ask me as many questions as possible. Don't worry about whether I can ask or not. The more you ask, the better you learn. And like I said, this is a technical session. This is a little complicated in terms of technology, but a good understanding will come once you continue to learn and know more about it. And like I had mentioned to Dr. Swaminathan, I'm always available after the session also. If you have any doubts, clarifications, always feel free to reach out to me. So let me start the session. I'm going to present. Can you all see the presentation? Dr. Swaminathan, can you all see the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to do here is, that's why I've titled it as blockchain demystified, because there is a lot of jargon and a lot of complications surrounding this technology. I wanted to simplify this concept for people, right? So let me start by showing you a word cloud. If you see this word cloud, there are many words, many terms, technical terms, things like cryptography, things like decentralization, hash, hyperledger, proof of work, mining. A lot of these are important things that have got to do with this blockchain technology, right? So if you understand all of these concepts, right, one after the other, you will more or less understand how blockchain works. In today's session, we will be trying to cover as many of these as possible, right? We will not be able to cover all of it, but the key ones which are important for us to know how blockchain works, we will try and cover. So what is blockchain and why do we need it? So let me start with the question of why. So what is the need and the genesis? So I'm going to take you back in time. So initially, as human beings, we started as hunter-gatherers, which means that many thousands of years ago, human beings were hunter-gatherers. So they had a nomadic lifestyle. They would go hunt for food, and wherever they found food, they would hunt and then keep moving, right? So that was a few thousand years ago. And then you started having agricultural settlements. Now, the whole idea of agricultural settlements was when they realized, or they actually they found out how to cultivate. What happened with agricultural settlements is people started settling down, albeit temporarily, but settling down in specific places where they could grow crops, where they could grow fruits and vegetables. And slowly the concept of settlement started happening. And that started happening because of agriculture. Over a period of time, you had this industrial revolution, right? A few hundred years back. Now, these industrial revolution actually brought about a lot of changes. What started happening with the industrial revolution is that people started living in and around that industry. So an industry was a place where thousands of people were employed. And because of that employment, their families and people related to them actually came and started living around. That's how this concept of cities started spreading. And these small agricultural settlements started becoming larger settlements with industrial revolution, right? Now, with the industrial revolution, there was a need for centralized authorities and regulators, because you needed to have law and order to be maintained. You needed to have rules and regulations. You needed to have specific processes in place, right? And because there were a lot of people living in concentrated areas, so it was important that we have systems and processes. So the last few hundred years, you have been having a lot of. So when I talk about centralized authorities or regulators, we're talking about a central bank. Say an RBI is a centralized authority, government is a centralized authority, right? So any organization or an entity which has authority to take decisions on behalf of people, right? So this is something that, and there were a lot of advantages of these centralized authorities, because you could actually have things happen fast. There was a common rule of law. All of that started happening. But over a period of time, this trust in these centralized agencies started going down. Right? So typically things like corruption, non-value adding intermediaries, a lot of these challenges have started creeping in our centralized authorities or regulators. This has led to a deficit, trust deficit in the centralized agencies. Now, why am I giving you this background? It's important to understand how blockchain began. There is a philosophy behind how blockchain began and what blockchain actually started as a process for. right? So one of the important things is that trust in these centralized agencies started going down, right? So the genesis of blockchain goes back to about, say, 12 years back, 2008-9. There was a huge financial crisis. I'm sure a lot of you would have read about it. Those of us who've been in, professors or people who are above 40 have actually probably seen the downturn that happened in 2008-9, right? There were a lot of factors that led to this financial economic crisis all over the world. What started off in the US then spread to the rest of the world. Now, if you see a lot of things, there are a lot of reasons that are given: monetary policy being eased, underestimating the risk in financial markets, failure of corporate governance, federal budget deficits, housing bubble, stock market bubble. A lot of these things started happening. If you see some of the elements that are very common in this is the fact that a lot of these are mistakes or challenges from centralized agencies. So some of these centralized agencies started collapsing. I'll give you an example. You had a crisis in 2008-9 where millions of people who, after working for say 35-40 years, put their lives, earning life saving in specific schemes, retirement schemes, and the retirement schemes in turn invested that money in stocks. And when the stocks went bust, all people who actually invested in this lost their money. So imagine having all your hard-earned money over so many years lost just because of decisions that a few people make. So these were things that people started thinking about, saying, should I not be in charge of my money? Should I not be in charge of transacting with people directly? Do I need so many intermediaries? All these intermediaries are bringing in a lot of challenges. Those were the questions that started happening. And with that, in 2008-9, there was a white paper. Think of it like a document that was put on the public domain on the internet, right? It was called Bitcoin. Okay, so a person by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto actually published this white paper, right, and put it on the public domain. This actually started trending a lot. People started going through that white paper and actually thought, oh, this is something that is a very new look at financial and economic transactions processes. So what this actually did was brought about a different thought process in terms of how you can actually create a new financial economic system that was completely digital, which had all the fail-safe mechanisms, right, which was secure, and which could eliminate a lot of these intermediaries which were becoming problems, right? So this was the starting point. So Bitcoin, a lot of people have heard of Bitcoin, and people think, okay, Bitcoin is blockchain, okay? But the fact is, the first thing that you need to understand is Bitcoin is an important milestone in blockchain. It is one of the use cases. So blockchain is a larger system, a protocol, and Bitcoin was probably the first practical system that was developed on this large platform called blockchain. That is important to understand. So Bitcoin is not equal to blockchain, but Bitcoin is a part of, or the starting point for this technology. Okay, now let's look at what are the 5 most likely risks that we're expected to face. This is a study by the World Economic Forum, right? And if you see the 5 different risks, except these 2, all the others have to do with natural disasters or so these 2. So you have other things are weather events, natural disasters, climate change, which is something that all of us have been hearing about. The other 2 have to do with cyber attacks and data fraud or theft. With this pandemic, I think all of us have realized the need for going digital. Now, classes are happening digitally, transactions are happening digitally, commerce is happening digitally, money transfers happening digitally. All of us would probably use more than one payment option, whether it's a Google Pay or whether it's any other UPI. We have our banking happening on our mobile, right? All e-commerce is picked up. So a lot of those things have to do with digital and data. And the chance or the likelihood of cyber frauds and attacks is huge. You'll be surprised to know that in the last 3 months or the 6 months of the pandemic, the cyber attacks have gone up multifold, right? In some places, in some industry segments, to about 400 to 500% number of times new cyber attacks have happened. So there is a huge risk, right? So when we are in a day and age where digital is something that we cannot avoid, and that is the future, there is a need to have digital systems that can help us connect with each other without intermediaries, that is also safe and secure. This background that I spoke about of a safe, secure, direct connection with people and systems is what blockchain brings. How and how does it do it? All that we will look at as we move along. So safety and security has become a global problem. So what problems does blockchain solve? Right? There's a very interesting picture. When I show this to people and ask them what do they see, I get a lot of interesting answers. The first one I get is that there's an elephant. Then they say that this is a temple, right? There are a lot of interesting responses. But very interestingly, what you see is actually probably the first one of the first versions of a currency. This represents a coin. So you see something which is similar to a circular or a round structure with a hole in between, right? So this was many years back in Micronesian islands. Now, why is this important now? A quick story is how people used to have consensus in the Micronesian islands. So imagine there are, just for our understanding, let's say there is an island which has say 1,000 people total, right? And what would happen is these 1,000 people would come every day, meet at a common place, and actually have all the financial transactions happening so that everybody gets to know what is happening. For example, let's say person A is wanting to transfer his land to person C, right, in return for something. He will announce in front of all the 1,000 people that here on and henceforth this particular piece of land belongs to C, and I am authorizing that transfer. So everyone, so the rest of the 998 people have seen and heard that this is something that the person who owns that land or property has transferred it to a person. So tomorrow if person D comes and says this land belongs to me, everybody then says no, we saw, and in front of our eyes the person who had that land has actually transferred. So there is a larger group of people who are supporting or adding value to a decision and ensuring that no frauds happen. This is important to understand. During the next course of slides, I'll tell you why, right? So this is important to understand this concept of consensus. There is a video here which is a very interesting way. I'll not play that video now. I will share this presentation and you can probably have a look at this video later, right? Then there is a problem called Byzantine generals problem. This is a mathematical problem that has not been solved for many years. Now, what exactly are we talking about, right? Imagine that these are different kingdoms, right? And this is, let's say there is a kingdom A, and there are kingdoms A, B, C, D, E, F around. And this is a large kingdom. Say that kingdom A has, say, an army of 1,000 soldiers, right? And each of these kingdoms surrounding has an army of, say, about 250, right? Say there are 5 kingdoms surrounding this kingdom and with an army of 250 each. And let's assume that this particular kingdom or the king of kingdom A is a very bad king, very evil king, and all the small kingdoms around are trying to defeat this kingdom. The only way they could do that is by all of them coming together, by trusting each other and coming together, right? So trust is very important when you're actually taking up something which is much bigger. Now imagine a scenario where one of these, so let's say they decide, the 5 generals of the small kingdoms decide to attack this particular kingdom at say 5 AM on a particular date, right? So the message has to be passed on to each one. So it's important that there is communication that's passed on to each of these individual entities, right? Now once that happens, like I said, trust is important. All the 5 kingdoms have to at 5 AM on that particular designated date and time attack. If they don't, even if one of them or 2 of them don't follow this instruction or turn bad apples and join with this kingdom, this whole operation or this whole process doesn't happen, right? Now why is this important, right? This is important because imagine a large digital system in which there are thousands of players, right? And there are in between, imagine this as the kingdom that we spoke about. Imagine in a large digital network, something like this as somebody who's trying to corrupt the system, or a cyber bully or a cyber attacker. And all the other nodes or the computers that are connected are playing a role to ensure that this person does not succeed, right? So that is the parallel I wanted to draw between what happened many years ago and how a system today, a blockchain enabled system today, can actually try and help us solve our problems of consensus and ensure that this Byzantine generals problem actually goes away, right? So typically what happens is, like I mentioned, a coordinated attack would lead to victory, an uncoordinated attack would lead to defeat. So imagine some of them become traitors, you won't be able to win. So blockchain actually solved this by automating this concept of trust. So each army can be thought of as a node in the system, and messages can be thought of as transactions, and the enemy city can be thought of as any man in the middle who seeks to alter the blockchain. So in a sense, blockchain is essentially a digital network or a system, right, in which thousands of computers or nodes are connected, right? They have a particular protocol or a methodology by which trust is automated, and there is a methodology by which consensus is maintained, right? How and why I will show you. Blockchain also solves a problem called double spend. This is a very important problem, very important issue that we face in digital, mostly in digital currencies or transactions. So imagine I have, say, 100 rupees with me. I have a 100 rupee note, a physical 100 rupee note. And I buy something. So when I buy something or when I give it to someone, this physical note from me goes to the other person, correct? So I give my physical note to the other person, so I don't have it anymore, right? So there is no issue of the same note, two people having the same note, other than when people try and duplicate it, right? But imagine a digital system of transactions, right? If let's say I have a digital currency, right, and I want to transfer that currency, I'll give you an example with something like a PDF document, right? I have a PDF document, right? Is there something called an original document and a duplicate? Right? No, right? All documents are copies of the same. So if I send the PDF document to somebody, right, and I am not supposed to send that PDF document to somebody else, is it possible to ensure that that doesn't happen? It is not possible, because it's easy to send the same copy of the same thing to multiple people. So in a sense, what I'm saying is that same 100 rupees can actually be spent with multiple people. Although I'm only expected to have, I only have 100 rupees, I can spend it multiple times. This is a problem that people were having in digital payment systems. Blockchain has actually solved that problem of double spend using various methodologies and technologies. So these are all different problems that blockchain has solved, right? So you must be sitting and thinking, okay, all of this is interesting and it's got to do with finance. How does it have anything to do with agriculture? It has a lot to do with agriculture. I'll come to that one after the other. Like I said, blockchain started off being a financial system, but the basics or the structures of blockchain can actually enable a lot of systems outside a financial network, right? So let's look at what exactly is this blockchain and how does it solve all these problems. Okay, a blockchain is in a sense a distributed ledger. What is a ledger? A ledger is a record of things. So we have in accounting a concept of a ledger, debit, credit, where you enter what's coming in and what's going out. So it's a ledger of or a database of information, right? So it's a distributed ledger. The difference is a blockchain is a distributed ledger, right? Which comprises of unchangeable, digitally recorded data in packages called blocks. So these blocks that we talk about in blockchain are nothing but, think of them as digital containers which contain information, right? And unchangeable. The important word here is unchangeable. What happens is once information goes into a particular block, you cannot tamper with it. It's immutable. You cannot change the information that goes into the block. This is a very important attribute of the blockchain. Why is this important? Again, I will explain as we move along. To give you a simple example, information that you have, validated and put into a block. For example, let's say one of the business processes requires validation of somebody's Aadhaar number, right? Or somebody's academic records. In today's day and age, a lot of frauds happen in this. People can change information on their Aadhaar details. People can change information on their academic records. We see on the news every day about fraudulent academic records, certificates. It's easy to get even a PhD certificate today from a university that doesn't exist. A lot of those challenges we face. A system backed with blockchain for academic records or for identity management or a supply chain traceability, with blockchain can ensure that a lot of these problems go away, because it has these unchangeable digital data which are recorded in blocks, right? I'll show you practically how this works so you'll understand it better. So each block, and each of these blocks, so there are multiple blocks that get generated every few seconds, and each of these blocks contain transaction data and they are linked to each other, right? So they are stored in a linear chain, right? That is why it's called a blockchain. Okay, so they are linked to each other. This technology or this blockchain does not have a single point of failure or downtime, which is a very important attribute. What do we mean by single point of failure? If you have data in a centralized database or a system, let's take our example of our Aadhaar data, right? Aadhaar data is stored in a centralized system, right? And while it is very safe and secure, the possibility of somebody hacking it, if at all it happens, means that all the data is gone or it is out in the open, right? So there is a single point of failure. A blockchain is a system which is decentralized or peer, which means, like I said, it's a there are thousands of computers or nodes that are connected. So the data or the information on the blocks is actually stored in each of these nodes. So there is not one particular block that can be attacked. If a particular block is being attacked by a cyber attacker, the rest of the other blocks act with this consensus we spoke about, right? That is where this is important. So blockchain has a consensus mechanism which ensures that the one block which was affected does not affect the rest of the blocks, and ensures that the transactions are maintained safe and secure. These are very, very important aspects of blockchain that you need to understand, right? A blockchain could be private or public. What these are, I will also explain as we move along. So what are the key principles of blockchain? First key principle is security, right? Like I said, it's very important in today's day and age for us to secure digital data. And in blockchain, it gives you an unforgeable validation by thousands of computers and has a concept of cryptographic signatures, right? So it uses a concept of cryptography, which makes it really safe and secure. It is also peer-to-peer, which means it is decentralized. Like I said, there is a direct exchange between nodes. You don't need these intermediaries. So one of the important problems that I spoke about was how centralization brought about a lot of unwanted intermediaries, right? To give you an example, let's say I'm an NRI, non-resident Indian. I'm staying somewhere in the US, say in New York. Let's say I'm earning $10,000 a month, and I want to transfer, say, $5,000 to my bank account. So I have a bank account in New York, and I want to transfer, let's say, with American Express, and I want to transfer $5,000 to my own account, say in Ahmedabad or in Chennai or wherever, right? Now, for me to transfer money from my account in the US to my account in India, in today's day and age, it takes time and there are multiple intermediaries. So what we mean by intermediaries are, there are multiple banks. So this transaction has to pass through multiple levels of intermediaries and finally reach your account in India. So what happens in the process? Two things will happen. One, it takes time for the transaction to happen. There are a lot of processes in between. And second, for the services that these different intermediaries render, there is a fee that you have to pay, which means if I transfer $5,000 from my account, what comes into your account in India will only be 4,000, say 4,900. So you probably give up or given as fees $100 for your transfer. So actually, has there any value been added? No. You're transferring money from your account to your account, and there is a lot of time and I would think unwanted fee that gets charged. Now the banking system would say, no, these are important things that have to happen. The question is this possible to be done without these intermediaries? Is there a technology or a system that can enable transactions to happen between peers without a lot of intermediaries? The answer is yes. With blockchain, it is possible to have peer-to-peer direct exchange. Now we are seeing that in the banking space, a lot of banks have now started experimenting with blockchain to do transfer of money across borders. It's a very, very important thing that has started happening. So this is an important principle of blockchain. Third one is transparency. So it brings in a lot of transparency because the data that is put on the blockchain is auditable. So information that is on the blockchain, depending on what type of blockchain that you use, you can set permissions and ensure that the data is auditable. This is very important in the context of agriculture. So what, for example, as an organization we are doing is we have developed a system called AgriTrack, which I will show you later, which is a traceability system, right? So farm to fork traceability has been completely ensured because of blockchain. So the transparency of what happens at every stage in an agri supply chain has been made transparent because of the blockchain. So these are all and how these help. So I'll come to each one of that later and how they help in agriculture. I hope so far things are clear. Dr. Swaminathan, is it clear so far? Am I going too fast, slow?
No, sir, it's correct, sir. It's clear.
Okay. Okay. Now we'll talk about how blockchain works, right? Some of these concepts might be difficult to understand. Don't worry about it. Note down all the points where you found it difficult. You can either Google and learn by yourself, or you can always come back to me later with specific things that you want to learn, right? But this is an overall idea, right? Like I said, I'm trying to combine probably a learning course of say 60, 70 hours into 2 hours, right? So you can only learn what you can within 2 hours. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. But what is important is for you to take the key things from this, right? And not worry about the things that you're not able to understand, and then come back to me or read by yourself in understanding those things, right? Okay, now this is how a blockchain works. So like I told you, a block contains transactions. So these are all, let's imagine that transactions are floating around in the digital world. It could be a transaction, can be anything. I am transferring my land from me to somebody else. Somebody is transferring money. Somebody is showing their academic records to an institution. Somebody is validating an Aadhaar transaction. It can be anything, right? Any digital transaction, right? And each transaction in the blockchain has what is known as hash. Hash is an identifier. So for example, any information you put in a hashing system gives out a particular output, which means, for example, I can put just one character in a hashing system. It gives me a specific output with a certain number of characters. Let's say, for example, 100 characters. So that identifier of that particular transaction is this hash. My transaction can be one character, or my transaction can be an entire library. I can put thousands and thousands of GBs of data and create a hash. So the hash is the identifier for the data that you've put into that particular transaction or that particular block. It is very important because this is the system that a blockchain follows. So for each transaction, there are hashes created. And for multiple hashes, there are combined hashes that are created. So this whole concept of creating hash after hash for multiple sets of information is called Merkle tree. These concepts of hashing and Merkle tree is not new. Please understand, it's very important and interesting to note that blockchain technology in itself is not completely new. It's actually an integration of various innovations that have happened over the last 20 years. Things like distributed systems have been around, decentralization has also been around, hashing, Merkle tree, all of this have been around. But what is beautiful to note is how they've all come together, how somebody has put all of this together to create a system that can add value in a lot of use cases. That's why it's important. So these combined hashes form what is known as a Merkle. So this combination of hashes is known as a Merkle tree. So what does a block contain? So each block contains this last hash, which is a hash of hashes, 1. Then it contains the number of the block of the previous block n-1. Why? Because, like I said, it's a linear chain. Each block is linked to the other block. How does it happen? So our current block is linked to the previous block because the number of the previous block is added to the block the information in the current block, and so on and so forth. Along with that, the combined hash of all the transactions, like I said, this combined transaction of all the hashes is also added. There is also a timestamp. You know what is the time at which this particular block or these transactions were created and added into this block, to ensure that there is no, so people can't say that I actually sent it 10 hours back, or this transaction is supposed to have happened long back. No, the timestamp clearly gives you the time at which the transaction happened. There is something called a nonce. I won't get into that in detail, but nonce is an arbitrary number. It basically has been added as a new concept in this system to ensure a particular level of difficulty. I'll tell you why. So this, I told you this concept of consensus. Okay, now how does consensus work in a blockchain? So there is a, imagine, let me try and make it easy for you. Imagine there is a competition or a contest happening, okay, in which thousands of computers, so instead of players, let's think of the players as computers, and thousands of computers, let's even take it as players, thousands of players are participating in this competition or a game, right? Now let's say the game is about trying to find out a particular number which starts with 4 zeros, right? So you have to try multiple combinations to, let's say each person opens a particular thing to keep seeing that, to find that particular number, say a number starting with 4 zeros and say 20 other characters. So there is a particular number or a set of characters that has to be identified, and thousands of computers are trying to fight to do that, right? And whichever computer or whichever player finds that particular gets a prize, gets to publish the answer, and all the others will check if it is right. Now this simple thing that I explained is actually what happens in a blockchain. So these computers, so instead of players, replace the players with computers, which are nodes. So thousands of computers are trying, right, to find a particular nonce, or trying to find a particular set of numbers. And by doing that, they're actually validating the block and adding the transactions in the block. Now this is important because, like I said, one entity or node finds the answer and all the other nodes validate. So this is how transactions get validated in a block. That is why this entire system has been put together. So you have the concept of hashing, you have Merkle tree, you have all the information being stored, and there's a timestamp and a consensus mechanism which gets executed through a system where a lot of these nodes take part in ensuring that this happens. Why is this important? Because this helps ensure that the transactions are valid and that nobody can cheat. Right? There's a lot more to understand, and this is a simplified explanation. You can try and learn more about how this works, you know, when you have time. Blockchain is something that you will learn. The more you learn, the better you will understand. Right? I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. Okay. Okay. So in a nutshell, so what have we learned so far? What exactly are we talking about when it comes to blockchain? So essentially, it's a shared ledger, a distributed system of records shared across a large business network. Okay. It also works using this concept of cryptography. We spoke about cryptography is a system which ensures safe, secure, authenticated, and verifiable transactions. What is cryptography? That's a separate session in itself. Google it and find out. It's a system of securing transactions using what is known as a public and a private key. There are various, these are all not new concepts, but all of this have come together to make this blockchain system. But think of cryptography as a very safe mechanism for transactions, right? Then there is consensus, like I spoke about, a consensus mechanism where all parties agree to a network verified transaction. So parties or nodes or the computers that are connected take part in a process or a consensus mechanism to ensure that a block is created and that people agree, right? Then there is a very important aspect called a smart contract. A smart contract, in simple terms, is basically business logic, right? Basically a program that you write on the blockchain. So for example, the blockchains. So blockchains can essentially be public, consortium, or private. So a public blockchain is one where, imagine a blockchain where every single, let's say every single person in the country, every single citizen of a country is part of a blockchain. An example of that would be, let's say, our voting system. If it becomes completely enabled on blockchain, it will be a public blockchain. So why would we do that? We know that in voting, a lot of frauds happen. I have faced this myself, where when I went to vote, I think 2 elections back, when I went to vote, my vote was already cast by someone, right? So we have these kind of problems and frauds that are happening. A blockchain enabled voting system will ensure that, because you would have, for example, if you link, let's say, your Aadhaar and your voting ID with the blockchain system, with your fingerprint or your iris scanner, only you will be able to vote. And this database is stored on the blockchain, so nobody can tamper with it. The blockchain database is tamper proof. Once an information is put into the blockchain, it cannot be modified, edited, or deleted, right? So a lot of these advantages are there. So an example of a public blockchain. Now, public blockchain systems, for example, are Bitcoin is a public blockchain system. There is something called Ethereum. Some of you might have heard of Ethereum. Now, these are systems. Typically, a public blockchain also has a concept of a cryptocurrency which is associated with it. So Bitcoin, we all know Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Ethereum has what is known as Ether as a currency. Now, this digital currency called Ether is used for the transactions to happen on Ethereum. So we for example, have created a digital identity management system using Ethereum, right? It's available on YouTube. The demo of that is available. When you have time, you can probably even log in and go through. It gives you an idea of how we've used Ethereum blockchain to create an identity management system, right? So that is an example of Ethereum. Then we have these consortium blockchains. Now, what is a consortium? A consortium is when like-minded parties come together to work together. So, for example, let's say in the insurance segment, a lot of the insurance companies have come together on a blockchain to share data with each other, right? So that is a consortium. A lot of banks have come together to share data, because generally banks don't share data by themselves. So typically you have an RBI or another centralized system, so all data flows through them. So data from a bank goes to that system, and from there to another system, and so there is a lot of interconnect. But here, imagine 20 banks, and this is already happening. Imagine 20 banks come together, 2 banks from Dubai, 2 banks from the US, 2 banks from India, multiple countries. They all come together and say, okay, between us, we can share data using a secure blockchain. And in this scenario, you don't need a public blockchain, meaning the individual citizens of a country or individual nodes no need to get involved, because it is interaction between known parties. There is no need for the others to come in. So there you have a different type of blockchain called a consortium blockchain, where it is typically called a permissioned blockchain. While Ethereum and Bitcoin are public blockchains, they are called permissionless, which means they are a set, the rules and regulations are already set. You can't make changes to that. In a consortium blockchain, you can create those rules, right? So it's permissioned. So you can say that, okay, this particular RBI, for example, is the bank in the blockchain which will have these and these permissions. The other banks have these permissions. We will need 75% of the banks to agree, bank nodes to agree for a transaction to happen. Those are also consensus rules, mechanisms, can all be configured or customized. And once you customize and set this in your smart contract, then it cannot be changed. So while the private blockchain or the consortium blockchain are different from the public blockchain, they also follow or have the base of a blockchain system. So private blockchain, for the example of a private blockchain is Ripple, which is a payment transaction system that has been designed by a private organization, right? Why is it called private? Because it is owned and managed by a private entity, and they allow access to the public for transactions and things like that. So these are different examples. Okay. Now let's move on to blockchain for agriculture and food. So far, what we have seen is the basics of what is blockchain. What kind of problems does it try and solve? What is the genesis of blockchain? Where did it start? Why did it start? How did it start? And what it can do, right? These are all very important things to understand. Only if you have an understanding of what a blockchain is and what it can do, you'll be able to then see where it can, let's say you graduate, and some of the professors who are already working on projects on agriculture can actually see, okay, when we're using different technologies, where can blockchain add value in the workflow that I'm creating, whether it's got to do with supply chain, whether it's got to do with farm subsidies, whether it's got to do with anything, rural electrification. A lot of these projects today can actually benefit a lot with blockchain. How and why, we will see. Now, firstly, let's look at agriculture in India, right? So 70% of the rural households depend on agriculture, which is a huge number. So what it tells us is that agriculture is key to our economy. It is very, very key to for livelihoods of people. And that is the reason why today, if you see, agriculture has been given a lot of importance, rightfully so, because during the pandemic, agriculture actually, with all the industries going down, people losing jobs and all that, agriculture has actually shown a positive curve, which is great to see. Or our farmers have actually continued to do their best and actually have shown remarkable progress even in the pandemic that we've seen. It contributes to about 16.5 to 17% of India's GDP. And there are 263 million, approximately 263 million farmers in India. So there is a huge population of the country which is engaged in farming, right? So what are the challenges? Why is this important? There are a lot of challenges in the food supply chain. So globally, about 600 million people get sick. So 1 in 10, right, get sick from eating contaminated food. The economic loss because of this is about close to anywhere between 55 to 93 billion dollars a year, right? And food traceability has become a very important thing today. I'm sure you must have heard about how different countries have started making traceability a very important. What is traceability? The ability for a consumer or a customer to see the whole process of how a medicine or a food product is developed and moves through the supply chain. That is traceability. So for example, I'll give you an example from a medicine's perspective. If you go to a medical shop today and you ask for a particular tablet and you get a tablet, how do you know whether that tablet is actually an original or not a fake? It's not easy for us to know. The package will look the same, then the company's name also will be there. There are a lot of duplicates in the market, right? Imagine a scenario where the medicine package that you buy has a QR code. It's an example, right? You can use multiple technologies, but say a QR code in that. You use a scanner and you scan that QR code. That scanned, when you scan the QR code, imagine it gives you in your mobile or in your laptop or anywhere, the entire visual thing of the supply chain, where it tells you this medicine was manufactured in so and so factory on so and so date. It was quality checked. This is the quality approval. Then it went to this particular warehouse, and from there it got transferred to here by this particular logistics supplier through this. So you know the entire supply chain. You can see the entire supply chain. So it's traced, tracked and traced, and you have control over what information you can actually see. So it's important. Why is this important? Because to ensure that no frauds happen in the medicine or the food supply chain. Convert that into an agri or a food context. Let's say you go to a supermarket, right? All of us are used to buying today. We all prefer buying products that are organic, right? Because we believe they are much better. Example, right? So how do you know that a packet of rice or a packet of say cashews or whatever that you pick up, spices, and it says organic? How do you know it's actually organic in nature? Whether they actually followed organic processes? You don't know, right? While they say we followed this, we have this certification, there are a lot of possibilities of frauds that can happen in the value chain. A blockchain system can ensure that you can track and trace the entire farm to fork supply chain through a system that you can link to the blockchain, and this makes the process completely transparent, safe, secure, and completely validated. It's a very, very important aspect, with traceability becoming very important. Governments have already started mandating traceability. In the US, it is today mandated that you have a traceability system for medicines. They are bringing traceability for agriculture also. In India also, slowly we are seeing some of these mandates happening. I think last year there was a mandate that came out. I don't know whether it's executed now, but I think FSSAI brought in something which said, if you call your product organic, then you should offer traceability. Your customer should be able to see where the proof that this is organic, the entire process of traceability. These are all things that are also already happening. So from a compliance perspective also, going forward, this traceability is becoming very important. And traceability using blockchain makes it a lot safer and a lot more trustworthy, right? So that's also important. Food fraud costs up to 10 billion to about 15 billion annually. This is a huge cost that we see because of the food frauds. These are all reasons and challenges in the food supply chain. So what are the customers' expectations and perspectives? So 94% of consumers consider it important that the brands that they buy or the products that they buy are transparent about the ingredients and production processes. You do see that in every label of every packet of chips or biscuit or any product that you buy, you have information about what are the ingredients and things like that. The question and the challenge is this information correct? How do I know if it's correct? Right? But the fact is that 94% of consumers think it's important. Right? Today, all of us, whether we buy a medicine or whether we buy anything, immediately look at the information that is given. Right? For us to see whether the due date is not gone, whether the ingredients are correct, right? All of that we try, but we're not sure whether that the information is correct. That is where blockchain can make a difference. 75% of consumers do not trust the accuracy. This is also important. 94% people think it's important that this information is available, but 75% of the consumers do not trust the accuracy of food labels because they think that people can cheat with that. 35% of the consumers are sometimes confused by what is available on the label of the food packages. So the information that is given is more, is very complicated for people to assimilate and understand. So it's important that this information be presented in a simple manner that anybody and everybody can also understand. These are all customer expectations and perspectives, right? So then let's look at this supply chain itself, right? An agri supply chain and what are the existing challenges. So typically, agri supply chain starts with farm to fork, from the time the farmer starts the seeding, or even before that, till the time it reaches either a retailer or a consumer. So there are multiple processes that go in the entire supply chain. There are various places where you can have issues. So for example, what you see here are typically the documents. So there are documentations that are required in every part of the supply chain, right? Right from farmer information to what goes in, how the seeding happened, to how it is getting processed, date of processing, what happened during the process. Everything is documented. Today, most of this documentation is happening manually, but slowly we are getting into digital systems, and with blockchain coming in, a blockchain-enabled system will make it a lot safer. So what are the challenges? So compromise. So you can compromise, so tampering with the information, misrepresentation, substitution of information, contamination. A lot of times while food is being processed, a lot of contamination happens. Toxins, insects, bacteria, viruses, right? So there is legal culpability. So if you see that for each one there is economic loss, the contamination, there is legal culpability, spoilage. A lot of it is wasted because of poor storage systems and not having the right, for example, a cold chain or a cold storage system, and it has a huge social impact. The social impact typically can be if, let's say, we consider ourselves as a food grain positive country, a country where we have more food grain than we need, but we still have people going hungry. So what is happening is a lot of food grains or food particles or agri produce is lost because of spoilage, and it has a huge social impact. These are all things that are happening today, right? The different stakeholders and the problems that they face. So it is important to understand the stakeholders in an agri supply chain. So you have the farmer, you have the middleman, you have the mandi, you have input dealers, and you have retailers, a typical supply chain. There are various challenges that we face today. Long chain of intermediaries, right? Multiple people getting involved between a farmer. So like we keep hearing about this thing of, we buy, let's say as a consumer, we go to the market and buy, say, 1 kilo of piyaz or a tomato at, say, 50 rupees or 60 rupees. The farmer who has actually worked hard, toiled, only gets 5 rupees or 6 rupees for it. While he has put, say, 10 rupees of effort, 10 rupees of cost inputs, as well as his effort, he doesn't even recover what he's actually put. So a lot of intermediaries. So at every stage, you get commissions that get added. There's a lack of transparency. You don't know where it has come from, what has gone in, what kind of, in terms of processing, what has gone in, has anything been added. We know of a lot of things where they say that, this particular apple, people are waxing it to make it look good. So a lot of these things happen. Recently we read in the newspapers that, they found a huge stash of tea leaves, which are actually not, they're actually duplicate, not original. So a lot of these things we keep finding. Unethical practices come in. and a lack of quality output. So these are all things that are challenges, right? There is a need. So therefore, there is a need to create an efficient, transparent, and real-time supply chain system. One with blockchain as a backend will really help, right? So we have so far looked at what are the overall challenges that we faced, which blockchain can solve. The concept of consensus, the concept of trust, the concept of security of data, right? Then we've slowly moved into how agriculture and the agriculture supply chain itself is becoming digital. The information going. So a lot of these agri systems are today online or digital, right? And the central government and state governments are all trying to create digital systems which can connect the farmer, help the farmer get the right price, help the farmer get the right information for them to improve their output, information for them to get the right inputs, organic inputs, or all the pesticides, everything that they need, right? Today, that what is happening on the other end, we are producing things that are not needed for our market. While we have the capability to produce what is required. So let's say the export market or demand for something is very high, that information doesn't get passed on to the farmer on time. A lot of this lack of information, all of this can get bridged using digital systems today. That is what in the next 5 to 10 years we're going to see a huge revolution, and hopefully all of these systems will benefit the farmer. So if you're going to talk about doubling the farmer income, a lot of these things are very, very important, right? And every single agri event that you go to, people are going to be talking about technology, digitization, right? And all of that is going to become very important. So as agri students and people in the agri value chain, it's important that you understand, embrace digital technologies and try and use that at every level, right? So where and how can blockchain make a difference in the agri supply chain? So as we know and as we've seen, blockchain is a ledger system that allows multiple parties to securely track actions and movements of assets. It can also, it's an improve, what it does is that it improves data sharing, which can then help reduce the 1 trillion problem of food waste, right? It's a huge advantage if you could do that. One example in this is one of those important, I think it's called Accenture actually built a blockchain system where there are multiple CSR initiatives where people, huge canteens or huge kitchens are set up for giving food to children, right? Free food to children. Akshay Patra is a particular initiative I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. Did you know that in the recent past, Akshay Patra has included blockchain to help stem this food waste? And what has actually happened because of this is that 50,000 more children are able to get food free of cost on a daily basis because they've enabled a blockchain-based system. It's a very interesting thing for you to know. You can actually Google and find out information is available about this system on Akshay Patra, right? As an example. Blockchain also promises increased traceability, and this would help in preventing foodborne pathogens, which cost consumers about, on an average, $55 billion in the US itself, right? It can also stem food fraud, which costs the global industry an estimated 30 to 40 billion annually. These are some statistics that are mind-boggling, right? You translate that to a country like India, it makes it even more difficult, right? Because we have a complex structure. So what can blockchain do in the agri supply chain? So most importantly, it brings in traceability and transparency. So what is traceability? So you can, in the food supply chain, in the agri supply chain, get information, trace information one step back and one step up. So every single process in the supply chain, you can get linked to the previous. So every single process, right from say the information of a farmer till the time it reaches a consumer or a customer, every single step can be tracked and traced. So what has happened, where it has happened, how, when it has happened, using multiple methods, you can track and trace, right? Well, one important thing that people have to understand is blockchain doesn't have to be an individual or an independent technology in itself. You can integrate blockchain with multiple systems. So the future is about artificial intelligence and blockchain, IoT, Internet of Things and blockchain, right? And those integrations and convergence is going to become very, very important, right? Transparency, entire interconnected view. So traceability is where you're able to trace every part or every process in a supply chain. Transparency is about being able to actually audit the information that is passing through the entire interconnected view, what, where, when. So to be able to get that information, how is something produced, and all the other attributes can be tracked and traced. I will show you practical examples of how this can happen so that you understand this whole concept. So what kind of questions can it answer, right? In food traceability, it can actually, blockchain systems can help you understand where my food came from, right? So this is a question that all of us have, especially when we go and buy something which is food for, let's say, children or kids. Is important to know, right? Food safety, is my food safe to consume? It can answer that question. Is my meat from a healthy animal or from a malnourished one? It can answer that question. Sustainable and organic produce, is the food in the organic section of a supermarket really organic, or is it just been labeled differently? It's a very, very important question that can be answered, right? Where the farmers compensated adequately. This is the most important question that can answer. A blockchain-based system can actually help in our dream of doubling the farmer's income, because one, it takes away a lot of non-value adding intermediaries. Second, it can create a peer-to-peer system where the farmer can directly get benefited from the benefits of direct interaction with customers, subsidies, all of that, right? This is very important. So in a sense, this slide is important for agri students to understand. These are different things that blockchain can help in the agri supply chain or different aspects in agri. So couple of years back, McKinsey, I'm sure all of you heard of the global consulting company called McKinsey. They did a impact of blockchain by different industry segments. So if you see, these are multiple industry segments. They studied how it impacts on 4 different aspects: revenue, cost, capital, and social. What kind of impact does blockchain have in terms of revenue, cost, capital, and social? This coloring will tell you the amount of impact, right? A dark blue means high impact, medium impact, low, and limited. Of all the industries, right, agriculture, if you see, blockchain has a huge impact, which means that it can impact it positively. It can impact revenue. It can reduce the cost a lot. The capital investment required is not so much, and the social impact that it has is huge, right? So in agriculture, blockchain's impact is going to be very, very high, right? Okay. Now, how will blockchain track the food source? So this is getting into the specifics of, okay, now we've spoken about blockchain, it has an impact. So how does it actually happen? So imagine that, you have, for every single, like I said, in a agri supply chain, every information has a physical record and a digital record today, right? So imagine this is a digital twin. So there is a digital record of everything, right? So this digital record is enabled, is made available on a blockchain. So things like farmer to producer to distributor to retail, the flow of information, while the physical items move from one place to another, the digital information also moves safely and securely on a blockchain. This is the example. So this is the final product. Through a QR code system, you can actually track back to a particular farm from where this came, right? So that's to the extent you can actually backtrack item supply chain from the internet using blockchain. I'll give you a practical demo of a system that we have designed for organic supply chain, right? So what are the other agriculture use? We've seen the supply chain use case. What are the other related use cases where blockchain can create an impact? Fertilizer subsidy distribution. So Niti Aayog has already initiated a venture or a pilot where farm subsidies, the subsidies given to the farmers, can actually get directly linked to their bank account and can get done. Direct transfers can happen without any intermediaries and a lot of these compliance related issues, right? So that is an experiment that's already happening, right? So imagine when subsidy has to be transferred, it happens faster, safer, directly to the farmer, and he doesn't lose. So normally what happens when subsidy is distributed through a system that we have today, if a farmer is to get 10,000 rupees, he will ultimately end up getting 2,000, that too after a lot of time. In some cases, they don't even get it, right? So a blockchain-enabled system can ensure that subsidies can get transferred directly through their bank accounts, safely, securely, peer-to-peer, right? So that's very important. Fractional land ownership. Again, this is a very important aspect. Now, what is happening is with digitization and technology, it's not just the big farm owners who should be benefited. it is these small fractional farm owners who really have to be benefited. And blockchain actually, there are use cases in blockchain where you pool all your, so the concept of say small farmers coming together. Today, the concept of a farmer producer organization is growing. You have totally same thousands of FPOs which are doing a great job today, and more FPOs are coming. The idea is to get all these small and marginal farmers and their land ownership. So together, they can create an association through which they have a better. So if, let's say 1,000 farmers come together, they have better representation. They're able to go and talk and say, okay, this is what we have. This is the region. These are things that we can grow, right? And they can get represented. And fractional land ownership and what each farmer owns, right? And ensure that the data itself is correct, safe, secure is also important. Tractor sharing. There are today blockchain systems where tractor sharing and rental and how the usage, so information, let's say it's IoT enabled, information of how much it was used for. If somebody subsidizes it and says, okay, you are eligible for so and so, how do you track that? Or payment to be made, how much of usage has happened? All of that can get tracked using, say, so that's why I said convergence is important. Today, a lot of systems are convergence of multiple technologies, right? Price equalization, supply demand, to understand where the need is, to be able to give that information to the farmer so that he gets best value. A lot of those things are also happening today. Rural electrification, this is very, very important. Imagine solar energy being generated, excess power can actually be moved to a grid, and whichever FPO or farmer is part of the process, the entire information is completely auditable and safe, so that you know what has happened, how much have we contributed, what is the excess power generated, how is it coming back to us. All of that can get tracked, right? There are multiple use cases in agriculture. In fact, as we keep interacting, I've been fortunate to interact with a lot of agri-scientists and professionals from multiple universities in India and abroad, and we find that the more they learn about blockchain, they're able to find more interesting use cases or areas where they think this can add value, right? So in India, we are seeing that from at the top, right, from the Prime Minister onwards, everybody is saying blockchain is a technology that we want to adopt. Use of artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT is something that is going to see a huge increase with the pandemic and the fact that digitization is going to become important in agriculture. We're going to see a lot more of this happening, right? We've already started seeing in a lot of other countries have started adopting blockchain a lot faster, right? While we understand, because in India, we are a large country, completely dependent on agriculture, the systems are still not fully in place, but we are getting there in the next 5 to 10 years, which is why I think that for students in agriculture today who are going to enter the agri field tomorrow, it's a huge opportunity to make a phenomenal impact using technology, right? And agri is going to be a key focus area for us. In other countries, already you have agricultural trade happening using blockchain, right? So let's now, so far we've seen what is blockchain, what is the philosophy, how did it start, why is it important, what kind of technology, how does it work. Then we spoke about, in brief, about what are the challenges in agriculture, some of the areas, how blockchain can impact agriculture. Let's now actually look at how it works, right? Now, this is a simple example of how a blockchain can impact. I'm actually going to play this video. So what I want you to do is, first tell me if you're able to hear the volume. If you're not able to hear, tell me so that I'll share this URL on the chat. Each one of you can put it in your browser screen, see this video and come back. So first let me try it. Swaminathan sir, just tell me if you're able to hear this clearly.
Yeah, sure, sir.
If you think your Koopa was made in a coffee maker.
Is it clear, sir? Can everybody hear?
It is audible, sir, but I'm not able to view it.
You're not able to view it?
Yeah, sir, it is audible, sir, but it is audible.
1 minute. Now?
No, sir, I'm not able to view it, sir.
Can you see the screen?
No, sir.
Are
It
you
is
able to see?
audible, sir. I'm not able to see, sir.
You're not able
You
to
have to
see.
press now. You have to press now, it seems, sir. Using the
Yeah,
press and.
correct. 1 minute. Okay. Okay. What about now?
Yeah, now you're presenting.
1 minute.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Now
Yeah, yes,
can you see the screen?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Can everybody hear? Is
In
the
under
audio
2 minutes,
Yes,
think
sir. Yeah.
again.
Perfect.
clear, right? Is it clear?
Yeah, clear, sir. Perfect.
I'll play it here itself.
Yeah, definitely, sir.
Okay, it's a 4-5 minute video. Just have a look at it. This is basically about the journey of coffee from provenance to consumption. Provenance is basically origin, right? So how do you ensure that this entire process of, because coffee is a very expensive product and you have to ensure that the farmer benefits. So this is something that will help in the entire coffee supply chain.
Hello there. I am a proud Arabica coffee bean. My journey has been long, and I have passed through many hands. Farmers, traders, shippers, insurers. The coffee supply chain has too many stakeholders. Have you ever wondered about my lineage? Did you know it has always been near impossible to track where or how your coffee was made? Until recently, when blockchain technology took over and brought accountability into the supply chain. Today, you can trace your coffee's journey from Brazil, India, or Indonesia from the very beginning. Are you enjoying my story? Let's move on to the next phase and look at the planting process. Miguel, my farmer, although a tad rough, was a great guy. He planted me in the best possible soil, protected me from harsh sunlight, and nourished me with water. He waited patiently until I was strong enough to brave the outside world before replanting me. Replanting took some time, and getting used to my snoring neighbor took even longer. Let's move on to the next phase of my life. Here's where I met Mr. Inspector for the first time. Pulling and twisting my arms and legs, he poked and prodded every bit of me. And recorded all my details, including my type, fertilizers used, farm, and family I came from. And stamped my tamper-proof origin certificate digitally. Then began my happy hours at the spa, or what Miguel calls harvesting and processing. I was blocked, hulled, polished, graded, sorted. Oh, bliss. All of these, while registration details, crop information such as variety, temperature, and humidity were being recorded. Finally, after getting stamped with a quality certificate, I was sent on to the next phase of my life, transportation. Want to join me in my next phase? Let me warn you, it's a rocky road ahead. The journey began with insurance. I was insured well. In case something happened to me, at least Miguel wouldn't lose his livelihood. Shipping was hard though. I had to say goodbye to many of my brothers before hopping into the Cisalva. After a long journey, I reached the party central, the warehouse. I met so many other coffee beans from across the world and just chilled for a while. While I was partying, blockchain ensured that shippers delivered me to the right address. Miguel got paid in real time, and the importer got his delivery on time. This brings us to the last phase in my journey. You are now very close to your hot, steaming kupa. I took a nice long sauna bath at the perfect temperature to retain my aroma, while the roaster recorded my details. Then, when I winked at you from the supermarket shelf, we both knew it was love at first sight. So, that's my life in a nutshell. It's all because of blockchain that you are sure of the authenticity of my origins. It has brought transparency into this dynamic demand chain. Blockchain ensures that nothing gets in the way of brewing your perfect shot of espresso. Take card trivia test. And when you are done, use the app next to the coffee maker to enjoy your steaming kupa with the goodness of blockchain.
Okay, so I hope all of you saw that video. Yeah, was it clear? Yeah.
Yes, that was clear. Yes, sir.
Video is clear, right? Okay, let me go back to the. Okay, so what you saw. Can you now see the presentation screen again?
Are we able to?
Yes. So the idea was to show how this entire supply chain can actually, all the information and how it gets posted on the blockchain. These are the different things that can happen in a supply chain. This was specifically from a coffee bean perspective. And interestingly, all these video links, I'm actually going to share a copy of this presentation. All of you who are interested can always go back and see these videos. There are many such interesting videos also available. Now let me show you the system that we have actually developed. Okay, we'll give a practical idea of what we are talking about. So we've developed a system called AgriTrack, which is a blockchain-based traceability system, right? So what I'm going to show you is the different screenshots of how it actually works and what the whole system is about. So this is the overall workflow or the idea of what we're trying to do here. So we are working with FPOs, right? The farmer producer organization. The idea is to track and trace agri commodities. So imagine there are buyers, say, from other countries who want to buy organic produce in bulk. Let's say they don't have today a system where they can actually track and trace whether the entire process was organic and whether it was followed. So we've created this system where a customer or a consumer can actually verify the entire process, the entire supply chain of an organic product. So if you look at this particular workflow, there are multiple stakeholders in this. You know, NGO or an FPO. There are geotagging partners. MEBIF is a partner. NABARD is a partner. Agri University is a partner. There are various processes involved, like certifications, geotagging, approvals, validations, right? And at every stage, so there are, first we start with the farm and the farmer details. So in our system, we have, in all the information about farmers that are getting collected. This itself is a lot of value. Imagine in India today, actually, the information about farmers itself is not fully authenticated available. So imagine a scenario where all the farmer data and their Aadhaar numbers and their land holding is all authenticated, validated, and available. It could really, that itself is huge value. This would help in giving subsidies, in reaching them when it comes to insurance, in giving them financial support, in companies which want to give loan, they don't have that information. So all of this itself is a huge value, right? So we, for example, will collect all the information about a farmer, right, from his personal information of name, his date of birth, his land holding, Aadhaar number, all of that, and all of that is stored securely. The land certification, if a farmer is following organic processes, what are the organic certifications, how does he do it, everything is captured, right? So for example, today we have started with 3 different commodities, right? Organic, so we're looking at banana, papaya, and turmeric, right? So we have a track and trace system for that entire supply chain. So I'll show you how that works. So let's say a farm and farm details is the first one, then there's seed management. At every stage, the information that is entered, there are photographs that are captured with geotags. So you know that if a farmer's land holdings, if let's say I have a small farm, say somewhere in Satyamangalam in Erode district of Tamil Nadu, or I have in Junagadh, anywhere, right? You have farm holding, and that information is updated in the blockchain system with geotag. So you know your farmland's latitude, longitude, right? And the timestamp. So nobody can then cheat. This also complements the record available with the authorities, right? And then every single thing from there on, the seed specification, seed treatment, what kind of seed is used, where they got the seed, what variety, all of that. And when the process happens with photographs. So at every stage, if you see, there are photographs with geotags. So this will ensure that the process is followed, that we know it is from the particular farmland. Whether they're using organic inputs, then, how do we know whether after that they have not used fertilizers? So soil test results, all of that gets updated. Irrigation, the dates, the volume, everything with photographs and geotags, harvest date, crop testing. This entire process information is captured, right? So this is the system that we have put together. I'll show you what all goes in, what kind of process happens, and finally, how do we see it? So this is a Agritech login for a FPO. So they basically have a secure login. All this information, let me tell you, is linked to the blockchain, right? So the FPO logs in, and so this, I will show you this later. This is a proof of data. The fact that this information is available on the blockchain is something that I will show you. So when you click, for example, on the operations, you have a set of the menu in which they have a master. You can create the different slots, the different crops you want to cultivate, dates in which and the farmers, all of that. So farmer registration, all of that can happen. So this is typically what, so you select a particular, so I said there are 3 that we are starting with. So you have papaya, turmeric, and banana. So when you select a particular slot or a crop, you can actually have the farmer's details fully available. So we've already entered a few data, right, dummy data. And while clicking each of that, so you have all the farmers, list of farmers with their data available. So when you click a particular farmer's data, you have that information of that farmers, which slot he is from, what crop, Aadhaar number, name, mobile number, email address, PIN code, right? Land holding, right? Like I said, everything is captured along with the photograph. So here you see the timestamp, the latitude, longitude of that particular farmer's land holding, of that particular farmer's land, right? So this is also something that is available. All the other information in terms of machinery, livestock, what are the different crops they've grown, what is the previous crop that they grew, all that information is available, right? Then there is an admin process, right? For the others, the office bearers in the FPO or others in the supply chain to validate and approve. So the seeding process, to inputs, to operations, to growth updates, to harvest, to storage, to certifications, to the sale, right? So for example, the list of, so for each farmer, if you see, it will give you the list when you go, when the approver is actually being allowed to go and see what the information is available and approve it, right? Now I'll actually show you this information on the blockchain itself, right? This is a practical as to how it actually happens. So we are using a system called Hyperledger, which is a permissioned blockchain, right? We saw public blockchain, consortium, or a permission blockchain, right? So we are using a permission blockchain. Why? Because we are connecting people in the supply chain who are all connected to each other. The farmer, the FPO, the Agri University who are knowledge partners, to different people who add value, logistics providers, to seed providers, to input providers, to weather input providers, to all of that, right? So this is a dashboard, a Hyperledger or a blockchain dashboard. So you have basically the number of blocks, number of transactions, number of nodes that are connected, number of smart contracts or chain codes, right? Here you see the different blocks that have got created. I told you how the process of a block gets created. So this is typically how it gets seen on a blockchain system, right? So there is a hash, which is an identifier for each block, right? Now this is typically what is available inside the block hash. When you go in, it tells you what is the channel that's being created, what's the block number, when was it created, like I said, timestamp, how many transactions are there, what is the identifier, what is the block hash, what is the data hash, what is the pre-hash, all of that information is available, right? And updates as and when the block gets added. Every few minutes, blocks get added depending on the transactions that happen in the system, right? And these are at the transaction level. Block is at the network is at the largest, highest level, then blocks, then transactions. So at every individual transaction level, there are hashes created for the transaction. And when you click a particular transaction hash, you'll actually, for example, get to know what information is already put into the blockchain. So this is the detailed view of what is actually getting into a particular transaction. This transaction data, the status updation has happened, information on what is, for example, the farmer name, all that information that you see here has actually gone into the transaction, which is then gone into the block, validated by the entire system, right? So what does it actually, eventually what happens here, right? So what are we doing this? How does this help a particular buyer and the farmer? So the simple way of doing this is we have a track and trace. So we track and trace using a QR code. So this is a QR code generator. So imagine you're a customer or a buyer from abroad, or let's say you're a consumer, you go to a supermarket and you buy a product and there is a QR code. Let's say In this example, I'm a buyer and I'm wanting to look at, I've placed an order for banana, I'm wanting to track and trace. When I click on banana, I get a QR code. When I scan that QR code, so what essentially happens is with my QR code scanner, when I scan it, I actually get the entire trace on my mobile. So this, for example, when I clicked on banana, the crop name, to which is the FPO that is, for that particular batch of particular banana, who are the farmers who are involved, right? Each farmer, when you select, you'll get the seeding details of what variety, when was the seeding done, so you see the date, what is the approval status, what inputs have gone in, so everything. And please note that all this information is on the blockchain, so nobody can tamper with or cheat. So you can be rest assured that this information is latest, is up to date, no cheating, and completely transparent, right? Authentic information. So this is a system. So we recently had the opportunity to have this being launched by Dr. Chintala, who's the chairman of NABARD, and Dr. Kumar, who's the vice chancellor of Tamil Nadu Agri University. We're looking to expand this across the country. So today we're working with a few FPOs in Tamil Nadu with few commodities. Slowly we want to improve and increase. So which is why the more support we get from agri institutes to farmer groups to things, the more easier it is. Which is why what we're doing as an initiative is to do a lot of sessions to get students of agriculture, professionals in agriculture, scientists, and we do workshops for NABARD executives, understand blockchain so that you know where it can be used, and all of us can together bring this to create a huge value. So I'm done with the presentation. I'm now ready for any questions.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for a wonderful presentation covering length and breadth of blockchain technology for agriculture. Blockchain is the buzzword. It is very new. It has not been in the syllabus now. Maybe down the line, 5 or 6 years, we'll be having that in syllabus. But our agricultural students over here, our students are very much fortunate enough to listen to your lecture on blockchain. Through this session, I definitely feel that they'll be having some exposure, at least, on what is blockchain, how it is useful.
Yes.
And the latest developments and all now, since they have to be exposed to. And students, you have any particular queries, you can ask in the chat box. We can take it live for you. So before any query coming from students, sir, my query is, sir, how safety can be ensured, sir? How we can say how safe it is?
Yeah. So
since we are sharing.
Yes, it's a very important question. So safety is inbuilt or is a very important element of the blockchain. So the blockchain works using this concept of cryptography, like I said. So other than the regular, so how do we secure our existing digital systems? Whether it's any app, we have a user ID password, right? Which is a simple, and you have OTP, you have multiple such. So you imagine that blockchain can bring in the next level of security using cryptography. So this information that is put is cryptographically secure. First of all, it's when you put the information, right, if somebody tries to access it who's not authorized, all they will be able to, even if they try to hack it, it's not possible to hack because, like I said, you use the consensus mechanism. That is one of the key aspects to secure it. Even if they do, the information is not something that they'll be able to make sense of because it's cryptographically secured, right? So security is a pre-built or an inbuilt process of blockchain, and that is one of the important attributes of the blockchain. I think there are a few.
Yes, sir. There's one important question, interesting question also from our student. Dayal Singh. He's saying, who is overlooking all the stages of a certain crop or fruit from producer to that of last stage of consumer? Is it any government authority or any private organization?
Very important question. So it depends on the consortium and the blockchain. So for example, we are working with NABARD on this. So NABARD, and there are multiple agencies that are involved in the entire process. Each agency plays a role. So I said, if you saw the slide that I put up, each agency had a particular role. There are agencies which play the role of compliance management. There are agencies which approve. There are agencies which validate information. Let me give you an example. For if I put the Aadhaar information of a particular farmer, I need to first verify if the information given by the farmer is true, right? So we have a backend integration with the Aadhaar system where this particular Aadhaar number gets verified. So if a farmer gives information as other information is so and so, Aadhaar number, name, whatever, if I verify that the Aadhaar system and the Aadhaar system reflects the same information, I know that it is authentic. So imagine this event of validating this information, this validation instance is actually put on the blockchain. So what it means is that we know that the information is validated by the source, which is the Aadhaar database, right? And that information is now on the blockchain, which cannot be tampered with. So multiple things are over and above this particular use case, you can then use it. So that way, at every stage, so let's say there is an agency which is given the responsibility of, let's say an organic certification body is part of the system. So when an organic certificate is uploaded, that agency can then validate and verify this system, right? So you know that the organic certification is valid. Now, who has overall authority? Now, ideally, for a system like this, you would like a national level system to be rolled out. Our aim is to have a national level ecosystem where multiple players, including NABARD, including the compliance agencies, including FSSAI, and all the important players come into the system and play their role. So that, which is why we are using a permission blockchain. It's important to note that we are using a permission blockchain where we can configure it and give specific permissions and allow access and rules as per what the overall agency wants. So with NABARD, the idea is that we're currently piloting it with a few commodities and slowly want to expand it over more farmer networks, more commodities, more stakeholders. So eventually it will become an ecosystem where all the important players will come and be part of this system. Each one will come and play their role. You will have an interconnected network of interrelated partners in the supply chain who come and play their role. And you will have those rules and regulations also in place. Have I answered the question?
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you, Daya, for the wonderful question. Students, do keep your questions coming. And so I have got one more question. What are the employment or job prospects of students? For example, if they maybe 5 or 6 years down the line, how do you see blockchain will become in India, especially?
Very, very important question again. So the challenge that is currently being faced is that there is a huge demand for blockchain and there is a huge demand for domain professionals who are from a particular domain but who have an understanding of blockchain. So I am a blockchain professional, right? And there are people, we take the support of domain experts in agriculture. So there is a need for coming together of blockchain technology professionals and domain experts who have an understanding of blockchain, right? To be able to create something of value. So there is a huge dearth of such professionals. If you see globally, let's say there are probably about 10,000 blockchain developers and say a few thousand domain experts in agriculture who have a basic understanding of blockchain, which is the reason why we try and go and do these sessions so that people have a decent understanding. And in the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be huge demand for agri professionals who also have a basic understanding of technologies and how to use this technology in their specific use cases. So that is going to be huge. Not just blockchain, IoT, artificial intelligence, all of these technologies are going to become important. The confluence or convergence of these technologies are going to become important. So understanding of digital technologies is important for agri students, and it's going to become not something, it's not going to be a good to have skill, it's going to be a need to have skill. So my suggestion and my request and my advice is to be very, very open to learning new technologies, whether it's part of your curriculum or not. Interestingly, with few other universities, so in TNAU, for example, Tamil Nadu Agri University, we are actually doing a course. We have an MOU with the university. We're actually doing a course for agri students. We're going to start a course for the third year students, right? Which is actually linked to the curriculum. So those are all things that pick up, and you are going to have a huge demand for example, as an organization, when we want to expand our own system, we will need a lot of agri professionals. People who have passed out of agri institutes who can be domain experts, who also understand, because tomorrow when we want to have this system being used in many localities in India, we need people who have an understanding of agriculture, who know the farmers' issues, who know the specific agri-related problems, and understand a system like blockchain to take it forward. So there is a huge need, and this is the career prospects are very good.
So one question from student Smith was, about the chance of malfunctioning of data, for example. Is there any possibility of tampering the data while entering from input to form to the chain?
Important question again.
Yes.
So two things can happen. Somebody can try and hack into the system. One, to change data. Now blockchain doesn't allow that. Like I said, it's a system where multiple nodes are there. So you can't, it's not, that's why we said there is no single point of failure. A centralized system has single point of failure. I gave the example of, just for an example, I'm taking something like Aadhaar. There was an instance where, I don't know if some of you know about this, I think a year or so back, the head of the Aadhaar system came onto Twitter and said that ours is the safest system.
Yeah.
And the next day somebody hacked the information and put it on Twitter, right? And some of the challenges are there because it's a centralized system. Data is in one particular entity, right? Here, data is replicated across a set of nodes. So somebody trying to, so first of all, it's not possible to hack the system. Second, the data is cryptographically secure, right? So this is one end of the spectrum. So it is safe and secure. What if I genuinely make a mistake? I want to put information, but I made a mistake. So there are ways and means for you to handle that. What cannot happen is the information that you've put, even if it's a mistake, it cannot be changed, right? But you can append that information in your smart contract. If the person who's put the information comes and says, I made a mistake, and the authority which can approve says, okay, I know this is a genuine mistake, and I approve the newer information that is put, the newer information can be tagged to that person. So that is possible. So like I said, there are ways and means to manage it, but the characteristic of the blockchain is that an information that is, so when you go and track entries, you will see that there was a wrong entry and that information is available for people to see. That cannot be deleted or modified, right? But the correct information which was approved by an authority, which is inbuilt into the smart contract, can then get tagged. So that is possible.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So some related question to that. Jatin Soni, he's asking about piracy. He's more interested in knowing about blockchain and how it can tackle piracy-related problems.
Yeah, in fact, one of the biggest reasons why you would use blockchain is to ensure that there is no piracy. Yeah. Blockchain is actually being used a lot, even in the industries where copyright, in research, in music, where piracy and so a lot of research work, piracy is a huge challenge. Even in for example, something like writing books, people copy a lot of information and use somebody else's copyright without asking. A lot of them can actually get stopped using blockchain. So today across various use cases, research, blockchain is being used. So blockchain actually helps when it comes to ensuring that piracy doesn't happen. Right? Piracy gives you piracy proof.
Yes, thank you, sir. So one question from my side is, what are the minimum requirements for an active blockchain learner? For example, if one student has to learn blockchain, for example, he has to become active in that. Okay. So right now, the students are in 3rd and 5th semester in agriculture, horticulture as well as agriculture. So now if they are interested in taking up a blockchain technology course, then what are the minimum requirements that they should have?
Okay. So again, interesting and important question. So there are two ways in which you can be part of a blockchain, in two ways in which you can learn blockchain. There are people who learn how to code on the blockchain. So these are tech professionals. So IT people, software guys, or students who are learning computer science, who want to learn how to code. So whatever we create, so the system that I showed you has actually been created using the blockchain code that you learn. So for example, a public blockchain like Ethereum, you need to learn something called Solidity, which is the programming language that is used, right? And Hyperledger Fabric that we have also used in this use case, there is a different thing to learn. So there are multiple languages that you learn if you want to become somebody who writes the code on the blockchain. So that is one side, so which is for technical folks. On the other side, there are domain experts. People, if you're from agriculture and you want to work on agri-related use cases, we have courses where you learn about, so what we started off with, which is one of the starting points, where you learn about the overall idea. So we have, for example, and I told you about the course we're doing with the Agri University. So there we get into a domain expertise. So what we're trying to do is, in agriculture, what are those different use cases? And we get into the details of where blockchain is used, how blockchain is used, how does it help, right? And the agri professional brings in the agri inputs. So as we keep building on this, we are finding more and more use cases coming out. So to answer your question, to clarify it again, for technology professionals, you learn the code. For others, you learn the utility of blockchain in the specific use cases within that particular domain, right?
Yes.
So you can become a business analyst or a domain expert,
Yes.
right?
So,
And there is a huge need for domain experts also.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go on.
So through this IDP program, we are also teaching students about machine learning, like Python and all. No? We are having sessions and all, and
Yes.
like 25 students of us, they have mastered Python language. We are doing it, sir. Are we going the right direction, sir? For example, we want our students to also become active coders. Apart from domain knowledge that they have, we also want them to learn some coding also.
It will be phenomenal if there are people who have an agri background also have tech skills. So you are actually bringing together a great set of skills together. So you'll be able to create a system by yourself. So you have the coding skills. Why would you need the domain skills? You need to understand, for example, a student in agriculture would understand the nuances. Why do we have a tie-up with the TNAU? They will tell us clearly, so knowledge transfer, they will tell us clearly what are those organic inputs that are required, what happens at this stage. So the nuances of what actually goes through is understood because you're a domain expert in that area. The technology part is where, or how do I, if this information has to be uploaded on the blockchain, how do I create that system? How do I create this algorithm? How do I create that business logic or the workflow? That can get done when you understand coding, right? Now, there is also, I see in the thing somebody's asked about whether, you asked a question of Python. Python is typically something used more for data analysis. It can help in a use case in blockchain where you're mining data, right? But for you to start off on blockchain, so there are again, so somebody's asked about C++, Java, Python. Now, if you want to get started on the coding side of blockchain, there are two aspects. You can work at a protocol level, which is to create your own blockchain. So there are people who are building their own blockchains, creating the consensus mechanism, creating their own rules. For that, you need C++. Essentially, this is built on a C++ structure. For people who want to learn coding or writing the smart contracts on existing blockchains, having a background in JavaScript is useful, right? It's not necessary, but it's useful. You'll understand some of the nuances because these are independent languages by themselves. I spoke about Solidity, right? And some of the other languages that are coming today. Slowly, there are systems which are using Java-related, JavaScript-related, and slowly they're creating more and more systems. So if any of these languages you pick up, you will eventually be able to start coding on blockchain.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So one more question. What is the level of government support, sir? For example, if there is any startup based on blockchain technology, how government support is there, sir?
Yeah. So yes. So now there is a increased interest from the government side. So like I said, we have been in this space for the last 5-6 years. One of the first governments that invited us 4 years back was the Andhra government. We were able to showcase our system to the Andhra government, which is one of the first governments to have introduced land records on the blockchain. Telangana has now introduced. So slowly, state and central government, so the Niti Aayog, which is a division of the central government, is now experimenting with the blockchain in various use cases. I was part of a discussion 3-4 days back where a lot of government folks from Niti Aayog and different entities came. It was interesting to see that a lot of them are now exploring blockchain. In terms of support, governments are today looking at funding startups. They are looking at creating incubation centers to help. So for example, we ourselves as a company are incubated at MABIF, Madurai Agri-Business Incubation Forum, which is a unit of NABARD. So we are able to get support in terms of knowledge sharing, support in terms of connecting us to the farmers, while we bring in the technology. What we would as a startup need are funds, because this is a system where you need sustained support for say 4 or 5 years for us to create a system large enough to work at a national level. So those are the kind of things, and I think there are a lot of schemes that are coming up, a lot of discussions going on about how startups in, for example, in Tamil Nadu, I think this is happening across the country. There are blockchain ecosystems that are being developed. You need a safe, secure system or environment where you can experiment, sandbox as we call it. Those are being created now, right? So you get specific permissions to use data, you get specific technology opportunities, you get a lot of those things that are slowly coming up, right? And you see, because with the increased importance being given to digital technologies, right? And to safeguard them and to ensure that data is available for people to audit, blockchain is going to be a key role. You will find eventually multiple technologies coming together and the government playing a big role in enabling, and this can happen only with startups. While big organizations are slowly getting to start working on blockchain, startups have already started doing a lot of work. So there are a lot of these forums that are being formed where interaction between startups, funding, support in terms of business, a lot of those things are starting to happen.
Right.
Excuse me.
Sir, coming to the challenges, sir, what challenges are we now currently facing, sir? All the blockchain practitioners.
Very, very important question. While this is a phenomenally transformative technology, there are still a few challenges. In my mind, for example, one is there is no standard. When I say standard, if it's, for example, if you're using something like a SQL server or a regular technology, you have standards. There are particular standards in place. In blockchain, there are no standards as of now, right? So once you have governments getting involved, you will have standards that will emerge. And these standards will become important for people to follow. Interestingly, the Tamil Nadu government last week had published a blockchain policy, right? And this policy talks about the kind of standards that they want to set and the backbone that they're going to create, which startups in blockchain startups in Tamil Nadu can use to create blockchain systems that can be used by the state government, whether for subsidy distribution, whether for various government-related use cases, right? So that is also something that is, so those are the challenges, but now slowly we are seeing the remedies for that. So you are finding policies coming up, you're finding standards that are being set, right? Third is that, like, the other challenge that I see happening is the dearth of professionals and understanding of blockchain, right? While there are countries which are quick to adopt. For example, we as a small organization have an MOU with the government of Malaysia to create a center of excellence for blockchain for the ASEAN region. So there are countries which are moving fast in removing barriers to create that. Country like ours will need time, but we are seeing that support that agencies like NABARD or Niti Aayog and a lot of them are giving. So the issues typically are compliance, standards, dearth of talent, which is why the more we do this, the more people learn about it, the more professionals come out, the better it is. You need a lot more people to learn blockchain coding, domain experts in different domains to work together. Those are the things that we see as challenges, for which we are starting to see initiatives.
Yes. Thank you. So there are no more queries from students as well.
Sure.
So thank you very much, sir, for such a wonderful marathon session. Blockchain is the buzzword in the recent times, but exposure and knowledge that to a practical demo on this particular aspect was limited. Thank you, sir, for accepting invitation and honoring us with your expert lecture. And that too for 2 hours, and thanking you for taking the students' questions as well. Definitely, apart from students, we also learned a lot about blockchain. Being agricultural economists, we know now how the blockchain is very much useful in supply chain management and all. It's really new to us also. Thank you, really, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was great to have so many questions and interest from students. All these young students of today are actually going to play a big role. I'll be happy to, take any more questions offline. I'll share this presentation with all of you. My contact details, email ID, I'll share with Professor Swaminathan. So do share it with the students. So whoever is interested, I would be happy to see. I'd just like to share an example of how we started with the TNAU. When I did a session on blockchain, many people did not know, but you had a huge turnout. And slowly students went to the teachers and said, sir, we'd like this to become a part of our curriculum. And slowly we started seeing that happening, because interest is coming from the student side to say, okay, we need to learn. And a lot of teachers, professors also got interested and started learning a lot more about this. So I think more and more learning, interest in the subject, asking the right kind of questions, giving it, say, for example, if you get an opportunity to work, intern with some of these companies who are working on these technologies, please do take them up, right? And thanks a lot for the opportunity. I enjoyed being part of this session. I hope it was useful.
Yes, sir, definitely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, dear students, now we'll break for the lunch as well as activity break. We have given you a lot of questions in that. Okay, you can respond to the questions and and you can upload the document account. Many students are leaving, it seems now, right? Just 84 out of 100. It should not be the case. Okay, take, you'll be with us throughout the session. That's very important. And we'll have the next session exactly at 1:45 p.m. So be here, join us. We'll start the link, and everybody should join. Okay, because your attendance is tracked, as well as the assignments should be submitted on time. Otherwise, you won't be getting attendance or even the certificate. Okay, and if there are any issues and all, you can call me, or you can even WhatsApp me, no problem at all. The thing is that if there is any 2 or 3 minute delay in connecting, do not load with a WhatsApp message in load. Wait for some time, give a break for 2 to 3 minutes, and then you join. Okay. If there are any specific queries, you kindly interact, because the thing is that we are bringing speakers from all over the country. Jatin, Sony, Smith, Goa, and all. Today's session is top performance. I want all the students to have some good questions, because next question is about Farm Bill. It is very much related to us. Farm Bill 2020 on NABARD-based support system agriculture. So you should be having some good queries. Have some good queries, focused queries and all, which will make the session more interactive. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll meet exactly at 1:45, right?